You know, it's more obvious than ever that the Wii U was essentially a prototype for what would become the Switch. When you put them side by side, the Switch is everything that the Wii U was trying to be, except it was tethered at home by a traditional console. Now that the Wii U has achieved its final form through its successor, the Switch, there's only a few remaining reasons to keep a Wii U around the house outside of it just being a collector's item. Over the last 2 years, we've seen Nintendo start to port its Wii U exclusives over to the Switch to both critical and financial success. In total, there have been 7 Wii U exclusives ported to the Switch in some form, which has resulted in increasing many of these titles' metascores by an average of 4 points. Additionally, while we don't have exact sales figures to compare, the general consensus seems to be that the ports are selling better on the Switch than its original platform. Now, given all these facts, it would be a no-brainer not to finish porting all of the last few exclusives to the Switch. In fact, according to my count, as of January 2019, there are just over 20 left. But I would argue we only really need the following 12. So let's list them out. Here we go. Let's get the most obvious one out of the way. Super Mario 3D World, which currently holds a Metacritic score of 93, is the highest rated Wii U exclusive on our list. It's no surprise we haven't seen this ported yet, given that Mario Odyssey launched in year 1, and Nintendo probably wanted to avoid cannibalizing sales there. With the Switch adoption rate slowing down and Mario Odyssey creeping up on its 2-year anniversary, it might be a good time to release this port towards the end of 2019 or early 2020. As for the unique mechanics, the game only had those few segments where the player had to touch the screen or blow into the mic to move a platform. We've already seen Captain Toad resolve both of these issues, so it's not a stretch to expect Mario 3D World to do the same. Another no-brainer is Pikmin 3, especially since the franchise has been dormant for nearly 6 years on consoles. Yeah, I'm not gonna count Hey Pikmin, it just felt too much like a spin-off, and aside being influenced by this channel's name, didn't really stand out in any other way. In retrospect, the Pikmin franchise really flourished once the Wiimote controls were added to the mix. Moving any of the captains with the joystick while pointing at your Pikmin with the Wiimote was a very intuitive control scheme. To make it better, the Joy-Cons can recreate this control scheme, all while avoiding the messy sensor bar setup that both the Wii and Wii U required. To make this port even juicier of an offer to Switch owners, imagine combining the first 3 Pikmin games into a trilogy and releasing that followed by Pikmin 4 6 to 12 months later. That would be a sure way to scratch anyone's Pikmin itch. Moving on to a sensitive title for me, STARFOX Zero, the game that seemingly divided the STARFOX community. Every time this game comes up, I instinctively have to defend it because I was one of the few that loved the direction the Wii U entry took it in. I can definitely understand why it was considered a flop and why many hated the control scheme. Hey, I didn't get them at first either, so I get that. However, there was a lot of good stuff in STARFOX Zero, including HD graphics, awesome speed boosted levels, some of the best bosses in the franchise, and a cool chicken walker mode. Bringing this to the Switch with the control schemes redone would solve the problem many people had and would directly improve the game's visuals. On the Wii U, the processing power had to be shared between the TV display and the gamepad's display, as there was action going on at all times on both. Now imagine if the graphics processor only had to focus on one screen, such as is the case with the Switch. We'd get a way better performing STARFOX with far greater visuals and more intuitive controls. The icing on the cake, however, would be if Nintendo added online multiplayer to this beast. The replayability value of this game would skyrocket if they added an online mode where players could duke it out in dogfights or even play various modes against each other. There's a lot of potential here, Nintendo. Please give this game a second chance. Next is Tokyo Mirage, which admittedly is a game I didn't bother to pick up as it came out during a time RPGs just weren't drawing me in. Still, I recognize that the game was well received critically, and those that have played it only have praise for this game. This game was released mid-2016 when the Wii U already had one foot in the grave, and everyone was busy talking about the Switch's codename, the NX. To no surprise, we can only assume the game flopped in sales as there is very little sales number that can be found on this game. The Wii U's gamepad wasn't so critical, making it even easier of a port choice. While an easy choice, the game's style is fairly niche, so perhaps that's why we haven't seen it released yet, with the Switch still running with a healthy library of games each month. Another no-brainer for this list is NES Remix. In fact, it's kind of a surprise we saw this franchise die off a few years ago just before the NES Classic released. This series started on the 3DS and offered bite-sized challenges for old NES games. After 2 titles on the 3DS were released, the NES Remix Pack, which contained both games, came to the Wii U. As someone who admittedly doesn't enjoy revisiting retro games that much, the Remix collection was a great way to revisit games in a more fun and approachable way without all the frustration of a full playthrough. Many were hoping for an SNES remix, but alas, it never came. Also, the NES Remix Pack would be another great way to sell the Switch online, as it gives you the perfect taste of what these old games are all about. Moving on to Paper Mario Color Splash, also known as the Wii U's swan song. Paper Mario released a mere 5 months before the Switch, capping the end of Nintendo's Wii U exclusive library. Paper Mario Color Splash was great in every way except for its dependence on the gamepad's control scheme, making it another prime contender for a port to Switch. For those unfamiliar, battles were fought through the use of cards that were either found in the world or bought in the shop. Each turn, players would have to select a card, paint it if it wasn't already, and then toss it up to the screen. There was a way to change the controls so that you could hit A few times to step through each part of selecting and initiating an attack, but it did make battles more tedious than they needed to be. While a port wouldn't be able to remove the card mechanics necessarily, it could streamline the controls for a smoother experience. As a Paper Mario fan, this is another one I'd easily pick up again, as it fulfills my OCD of coloring in all the blank spots found throughout the world. Seventh on the list, let's look at Xenoblade Chronicles X, a game that was in development almost throughout the entirety of the Wii U's lifecycle. It was a surprise that Xenoblade 2 was ready to go so soon after the Switch launch, considering how long it took this one to come out. In fact, I can still hardly believe we have an all-new Xenoblade on the Switch. This is another case like Mario Odyssey. It's just not in Nintendo's best interest to have 2 Xenoblade titles competing for consumers' attention. However, give it another year or two after Xenoblade 2 sales are stagnant, and it would be the perfect chance to drop this beast for another chance at life. The gameplay will suffer a bit from not having the world map in your lap, but the same can be said about just any other modern game not on the Wii U, so no real loss here. In the same vein as Mario Odyssey and Xenoblade, there's also Yoshi's Woolly World that would be a fantastic addition to the Switch library, if it wasn't for its all too similar Yoshi's Crafted World looming around the corner. With Woolly World having a second shot at an audience on the 3DS, I don't expect we'll see this title ported to the Switch anytime soon. But who knows, if Yoshi's Crafted World finds itself an unexpected new massive audience, it would only be a natural move to release a port of a gem like Woolly World a year or two after to keep them satisfied. We can't talk about Wii U ports without bringing up Fatal Frame Maiden of the Black Water. The way the title was released on the Wii U still boggles me to this day. The game originally released only in Japan in the fall of 2014, and there it stayed with no hope of it coming to the West while fans clamored for localization. A year later, Nintendo announced that the game would finally be coming to the West, but oddly enough, only through digital means. And to make it worse, the game's file size was larger than the standard Wii U's model hard drive, and took up half of a deluxe model's hard drive. It saw very little marketing, and most felt it was sent to market to die. It would be a shame to see this entry in the Final Frame franchise stay lost on the Wii U, but the controls would need a massive overhaul to port it over. The game required players to lift the gamepad to the TV screen in order to take pictures of spirits. However, it wouldn't be impossible, as previous games in the franchise clearly found a way to work without a gamepad. On a more cheerful note, surely you remember the wonderful 101? The game held so much promise for a new IP and really showcasing how unique games on the Wii U could be enjoyed. The game did end up getting mixed reviews, but it still holds a special place in gaming's history and deserves another shot on the Switch. The gamepad offered players the chance to draw on the touchscreen shapes of weapons for the superheroes to turn into. However, it was kind of clunky. Personally, I would only form shapes by using the right analog stick, so the gameplay wouldn't change much for me on the Switch. The game was just oozing with so much personality and charm, it needs to be ported. It's already been 6 years since this game was last seen. What are you waiting for, Nintendo? I get Platinum is busy with the new Bayonetta, but come on, get a small team together to bring this one over. Next up is the game that defined the Wii U for many with the hit Mario Maker. I'll be honest here and admit I found little to no pleasure with this game. While a cool feature, building my own levels had little appeal to me. Then the idea of running through an endless amount of Mario levels ranging from stupid easy to insanely hard was also quite unappealing. There was no complete package there with a proper difficulty curve or a sense of progression. It was just a buffet of 2D Mario, and I'm more of a 7-course dinner kind of guy. However, it's impossible to deny the importance that Mario Maker had when it launched and how viral some player creations became. In fact, re-releasing this game now that Nintendo has relaxed their YouTube policies would be a great time to reinvigorate content creators to play around with Nintendo games again. The difficulty in porting here is that I only see the building mode working with the Switch in handheld, as you need the touchscreen, but really that's not such a bad compromise. As Nintendo just released New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, however, I can't see them releasing a game like Mario Maker anytime soon. Before we close off with my last pick for the video, I just want to quickly acknowledge the following 6 Wii U exclusives that I've played and can honestly say won't be missed if they stay stranded on Wii U Island forever. Shoutouts to Devil's Third, Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, Game Wario, Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, Lost Reavers, and STARFOX Guard. And to close off the list of Wii U ports that need to come to the Switch, the simple but lovable Nintendo Land. The idea that is Nintendo Land holds so much potential. While understandably it was a launch title for the Wii U to specifically showcase and sell consumers on all of the Wii U's features, it could still be so much more. I'd love to see a Nintendo Land 2 where you play in a more fleshed out 3D world of a larger Nintendo theme park that's littered with goodies to unlock and find. Honestly, a sequel like that would have more hopes of seeing the light of day than porting Nintendo Land itself. Some of the minigames were just too dependent on asynchronous gameplay offered through the gamepad controller like Mario Chase, Animal Crossing, Sweet Day, or Luigi's Ghost Mansion. I can't imagine how anyone could make those games work with only Joy-Cons and one screen. It would be a daunting task to develop with an unlikely return on investment. Either way, I'll still be rooting for this IP to return in some form to the Switch, whether through port, half port, or sequel. And that caps off my list of Wii U games that still need to be ported before I can pack up my Wii U for good and put it in the museum where it belongs.
It belongs in a museum!
The Wii U will always hold a special spot for me as it served as my return to gaming full-time as a hobby and was the main platform I covered as I started making content on YouTube. It had its ups and downs, but in true Nintendo fashion, held a fantastic library. What were your favorites from the Wii U era that you'd like to see ported, or if you'd never had the chance to play the Wii U's library, which game would you like to try out most? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep it classy.